Thank you so much, Theo, for joining us for this opportunity. We would just like to get some update and some understanding of where we are now at the moment with regards to the finances of Sanral, and then obviously that hot topic of e-tolls. First of all, I want to jump in by asking you, I think the question that we've all are wondering is about the impact after the COVID-19 lockdown. Now, businesses have been hit very hard by the lockdown. Many had to close shop. And we want to know what is the impact on Sanral's revenue collection so far? Obviously, they have not been spared.
Yeah, indeed. So COVID has been a very difficult time for all South Africans, if I can start there. I know that there are people who've lost their loved ones. We send sincere condolences to them. We know that over 3 million South Africans have lost their jobs. We are really sensitive to that reality, and we know the role that we play in terms of assisting with economic recovery to be able to create job opportunities, because a lot of people are going into very, very hard times. We also know that workplace operations have been disrupted significantly because of this pandemic. And Sanral took an initiative very early in the process to set up a task force to deal with COVID-19 so that we could create scenarios and plans of how we would be able to operate at this difficult time. So very early, when government was pronouncing on the state of national disaster, we applied for toll operations as well as road maintenance to be declared essential services, which of course was granted. But having said that, we were able to mitigate to a certain degree, but we were still affected quite severely by COVID-19. In terms of toll, which is your question, we saw the traffic drop to unprecedented levels during COVID-19. I think at the start of level 5, our traffic dropped to 25% of what it would normally have been had we not had COVID. At the end of level 5, when we did our calculations, we found that we have revenue losses to the tune of 300 million for our toll schemes. Then in level 4, of course, there was a bit of a recovery, but still not something that you would be happy about. At level 4, our traffic increased to 50% of what it was before lockdown. And we calculated a further loss of revenue of some 140 million. Then moving to level 3, our traffic levels grew to a percentage of 70% of what it was before, but we still suffered quite a significant loss to the tune of 200 million, owing to the period of level 3. And then, of course, we've now entered level 4. Things are looking up. The economy is opening up and people are moving more. And we're hoping that things will get back to normal. But we've risen to 90% of what the original traffic was. We're still not at 100%. As you know, the central message in government is that people that can still work from home should continue to work from home, which means private vehicles are still stationed at home and they're not moving up and down as they used to in our toll schemes. You're muted, Mia. I can't hear you.
So sorry about that. So obviously, just like you said, you know, the impact has been severe. If I quickly calculated, it's about 650 million rand of revenue lost. We've heard of so many people who's and still calculating. And we've heard of so many people who call into our radio station saying that they're going to go to bed now hungry. They don't have anything to eat. So a lot of people are feeling the brunt. How do you navigate then? Because people simply can't, when they are in survival mode, they are not going to pay their e-toll bills. How far will Sanral be able to mitigate this crisis, going without a loss already of 650 and still counting?
Yeah, well, the question of paying toll, I think, can be dealt with at two levels. I mean, the one level is toll schemes across the country, because all toll schemes have been affected by the reduction in traffic. That means if you are not able to meet your revenue obligations, to meet your financial obligations as they become due, you run a serious threat of having the sustainability of the various toll schemes put under serious question. You also have a lot of capital that, of course, has been borrowed from the markets, which must be repaid, which would threaten the financial viabilities of the entities that have entered into contracts with Sanral. But more importantly, it would mean that a lot of the road improvements and maintenance that has to happen has to be deferred. Because if you can't go to the bond market to issue bonds to secure the capital that you need to do work, you can only defer maintenance. And I think Sanral has spoken many times that deferred maintenance is the worst thing that you can ever do as a roads authority, because it comes back 18 times fold if you defer it, for instance, by a period of 3 years. So the maintenance of roads in this country are going to become expensive for all of us, and the brunt will be felt by South Africans. So that's the one level where you can deal with it. Secondly, of course, it's this pet interest in e-tolls and what this means. It is hitting us badly. I think it is no secret that our collection levels have been low for a very long time in any case, hovering around 20%. With the COVID-19 pandemic, the reduction in traffic, interestingly enough, has pushed up the percentage payment rates, because you're dealing with a smaller pool of people. A lot of the people that have not been paying are not going up and down, so it looks like the payments have improved, but they haven't. So in percentage terms, it hovers anything between 19 and 22%. But of course, in financial terms, it has reduced. Where we used to sit at some 60 million per month, we're now sitting at some 40 million per month. So it's a bad situation. It's bad for Sanral. But let me tell you that it's not only bad for Sanral, it's bad for the Gauteng province as well, and all of the road users in Gauteng. These roads are now 10 years old. If we are not able to maintain them, it's the citizens of this province that are going to bear the brunt of bad roads. If you go now from the airport to Pretoria, you will see just how the R21 is deteriorating at very unacceptable levels. So we don't have a budget to maintain this network the way that it should, because we're not getting the revenue, and we're not able to go to the bond market to borrow monies when you don't know when you're going to pay back the money. And let me suggest further that it's not only something that is not in the interest of Gauteng province and its road users, it's not in the interest of the entire citizenry of this country. Because what we've had to do in the past 3 years, for instance, is to go to National Treasury to beg for permission, supported by our minister, to reallocate the monies that are allocated for non-toll roads, to be able to subsidize the toll scheme in the richest province of this country, essentially meaning that you're taking money away from roads that would have been done as non-toll roads to fill the gap on the side. The net effect of that is that some people in parts of our country will never get roads that were intended for them. And the Gauteng province, we were basically using money to meet our debt obligations without having sufficient money to improve and expand the network, which is really a problem right across the country. But I think that the time for debates is over. I think that the time for advancing the interests of specific lobby groups is over. I think that we need to get to a firm decision as a country of a bigger question that is beyond e-tolls. How is road infrastructure going to be funded in this country going forward? We need a clear funding policy for roads, because as I suggest, if the decision is that we don't use private finance to develop road infrastructure in this country, it means that the fiscus must give us the money. If the fiscus gives us the money, it means that the citizens and taxpayers will be the ones to fund the money that we will get from the fiscus. And if that's the decision we all take, then we have to live with its consequences. Because you may have heard at the previous Southern African Transport Conference that was hosted 2 years ago, that the backload for road infrastructure in this country has now increased to some 400 billion. This is the money we need to do what we were supposed to do that we are not able to do, not only at national level, but including provincial and municipal level. If the fiscus must deliver that 400 billion, it means that you are looking at an instrument, whether it's a tax instrument or a fuel levy, that is not going to be small. In these hard economic times, if the decision is that we don't use private finance to assist in developing and maintaining road infrastructure, our people must brace themselves to fund government to be able to give us this money. Otherwise, the roads are going down. Sanral will just be another roads authority that is not capable of managing its network, and you will have potholes on national roads and freeways, which is where we all don't want to go. So the matter is with Cabinet. A decision will be made by Cabinet. The last I heard, of course, was that National Treasury and the Department of Transport were instructed to further refine the work that we all did and submitted as an input for a decision. That work will go back to Cabinet for a decision to be made. And I think what is important now is that that decision should be in the interest of the entire country, not just Sanral, not just the road users in Gauteng, but the entire citizenry of this country and the South African economy.
Like you've mentioned, I mean, we've been going back and forth with this debate for the last, 8 years now? And we've heard from Gauteng Premier David Makhura in his State of the Province address, where he said again, that they've got a strong and persuasive case to national government to withdraw e-tolls. Now, let's create the scenario that there is an alternative funding model. What impact will this then have, on Sanral, just in terms of going forward, revenue collection, but then also the fact that, 2 years ago, I had this interview with Alex van Niekerk, and he said that time, Sanral had about 130 billion rand of planned new toll projects for the country that they remained on ice because of the lack of funds. What do you think? Just give us a picture of what the future might look like then.
Yeah. So, I mean, as I indicated, we are all waiting for a decision from Cabinet. It's not in our hands, it's not in the province's hands, and we hope it's going to be a decision that is in the interest of the entire country and the economy. The only real threat you suffer if the decision is that we don't use private funds to develop national roads so that a toll is charged, is that it not only affects what is happening in Gauteng, but it affects the future of toll in the country. Now, if you're not able to toll any piece of stretch of road in this country going forward, what that would mean is that the current toll schemes would also be called to question, which would introduce turmoil that we all don't need. Because if a decision is made to withdraw the scheme in Gauteng, other parts of the country would ask, but why should we pay when the people in Gauteng don't pay? Now, that's a debate we don't want. That's why I was saying that debates that try to push a specific stakeholder's perspective and lobby are not going to help us right now. We need something that's going to sustain the country. Now, what are we doing about this backlog that Alex was talking to you about? Those are all the roads, 130 billion in 2 years ago, which has now escalated to 150 billion. These are toll projects that are viable, that cannot be implemented right now because of the general anti-toll sentiment in the country. If we are not able to implement them through a toll, it means we have to reabsorb them into the fiscus. Now, Sanral's annual budget is just over 20 billion. If we were to absorb projects to the tune of 150 billion, even in the next decade, you will not get to all of the work that needs to be done. Now, you are correctly pointing out that you spoke to Alex some 2 years ago, which means some of the projects would have been underway by now. So these are deferred. The longer we don't solve this problem, the more those projects are deferred. And as I said when I started, if you defer projects, they come back very expensive in time. So some of the projects might not even be implemented going forward, which is a big challenge in terms of supporting our economy and ensuring mobility in the country. So what we've done is, number one, there is a basket of projects within that we have now pulled back into the national fiscus non-toll portion of our budget. You will know that in KwaZulu-Natal, we are improving the N3 and the N2 at great cost, a minimum of 22 billion that we have to spend there. If we were doing that project with private finance, we would have been able to deliver that network in a period of 4 years. But because we're doing it with public funds, and you get what Treasury allocates you per annum, we will only be able to deliver that network in 10 years. So there's that deficit of 6 years between the period when projects are ready and available for use, depending on whether you use public or private funds. And if that's the reality that all of us have to live with in South Africa, even if the N3 corridor is the main corridor that sustains our economy. But that's what we're doing. So we're not just sitting without options. We are doing those projects with public funds. We're just moving slower. Secondly, we've pulled up a basket of projects to the tune of some 27 billion from that 150 billion. And we have elevated them to the presidency. And we have been working with the office of Dr. Ramokgopa in the Infrastructure South Africa office. And we have ensured project readiness. We have worked with them to package the projects so that they are attractive for alternative funding mechanisms. You will know that about a month ago, the projects were gazetted as the new SIPs in the country, which puts them in prime position for interest from investors to invest in projects. They will still be tall, unfortunately, that basket. But we are working closely with the presidents in the PICC to make sure that we were able to secure funding. We have been in engagement with the New Development Bank. We are in engagement with a commercial bank, which would be backed by a World Bank guarantee mechanism, the Multilateral Investment Infrastructure Guarantee Agency, MEGA, each looking at an allocation of 7 billion. That would give a windfall of 14 billion to Sanral to be able to advance some of these projects. If we are able to secure that money, at least we will have solved part of the problem as well. Then the rest of the budget still remains, and it must still be found. If we are not able to access bond markets, as I said, we sit with a problem because the fiscus cannot give us all of that money.
My last question, as a parting shot, maybe if you can just tell us, it's the 650 million rand that you say that you have lost out on. I mean, how dire is the situation, the financial situation currently at Sanral? Is it a matter of you pay employees? Just paint us a picture exactly how dire is the situation.
So it's important to clarify that Sanral runs a dual business. We have a non-toll business and we have a toll business. On the non-toll side, in fact, we're dealing with a separate problem. We have a lot of funds, and because of COVID, we are not able to issue as many tenders as we would like. There is a risk of not being able to spend all of the budget allocated at a time when South Africa needs us to be churning out projects that are going to create work opportunities and deliver hard infrastructure that is going to be needed to stimulate the economy. So we're working very hard to address that problem and be able to survive and really get our business going under COVID-19 conditions. On the toll side, of course, the most important thing for us is to make sure that on an annual basis, we are able to confirm our going concern status, which means we have sufficient liquidity to be able to meet our financial obligations as they fall due. We have been able to do that up to this point. We had a big maturity of a bond that happened at the end of July, which we were able to successfully mobilize about 4 billion rands for. We have a maturity that is coming at the end of October, which we will be able to adequately meet. Our problems will begin beyond February next year, where our projected reserves are going to run out, and we're going to need more financial support for us to be able to meet our obligations. As I indicated, we are pursuing the option of the New Development Bank. We are pursuing the MEGA option. We're also looking at what we've been doing for the past 3 years, borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, taking some of the money from the non-toll system to subsidize the toll system, which will help us basically move beyond our obligations of February 2021. But if you look further, there are maturities in 2024 and beyond that will be significant in size. So you need a long-lasting solution to the problem. We can't keep kicking the can down the road. And I think the sooner we resolve the GFIP challenge, the sooner there's clarity about the role of private finance in investing in road infrastructure in this country, the better the platform and trajectory that Sanral is going to follow in future will be in this regard.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Is there anything else that you would like to, say to the public?
I would want to say to the public that in Sanral, South Africa has a capable roads authority, a roads authority that has proven on many occasions that it can deliver infrastructure that is essential for the development of our economy. Our Horizon 2030 strategy has sought to bring relevance into the work that we do by also prioritizing community development in the work that we deliver. So for every national road, we also now go into communities to deliver infrastructure that communities use on a daily basis, as opposed to just building freeways that go past communities. We use our projects to train SMMEs, and we use our projects to create employment. What we need is support for this entity to continue to sustain so that it is able to play the cardinal role it must play in the economic recovery of this country and in stimulating economic activity. What we don't need is to create an entity that is at odds with the public. We have invested a lot of time and effort to try and concede where we may have erred in the past, but try and develop frameworks that are going to make sure that there's proper public participation in the projects that we deliver, so that we get community ownership for the work that we do. Just yesterday, we launched a project in the Northwest, which links the R512 from Johannesburg with the N4 in the Northwest that connects Pretoria and Johannesburg with Rustenburg and Mafikeng. In that project, we were able to work successfully with communities, local business interests, political formations in the area to deliver a very critical road that narrows the distance from Johannesburg to Rustenburg. And that is the kind of work we would want to continue doing with our people. It's possible for us to sit and agree on how projects will be delivered. We don't want to be at odds with communities. And I think that we need South Africans to take up the challenge so that they work with us. And we don't want to be vilified as an entity because we've got a very critical role to play in South African society.